would certainly encourage anybody doing any form of prediction in any capacity, if they think this is their kind of competitive edge, to verify and conclude that I own the data set upon which we're making these predictions. There's certainly a whole host of generic predictions I might want to include in my application that I don't need to own and operate. As in, I want to do some quick sentiment analysis on some user-generated content that goes into my platform. I don't need to own the particular data set that was used initially to train for sentiment analysis. I'll just use something generic. This is not where I go compete. But there's certainly parts of what I do where this is what I compete on. This is how I win or lose. And I can't win on somebody else's data set. I can only win on my own data set, or at least allow myself the possibility of winning.
Welcome to the Product Tea with Lea. I am your host, Lea Dorin, and we are about to spill the tea with the best from tech about product growth and senior leadership topics. Good morning, everyone. My next guest is the founder of LaunchBrightly, a SaaS company that automates the product screenshots process and actually makes money with it. He's a pioneer and expert in leveraging AI and data for automation, and a serial entrepreneur who is never tired and who has successfully delivered a number of companies that exited on that theme. He's originally from Denmark, and now he lives in New York City with his family. So welcome to the Product Tea, Dennis R. Mortensen. How are you doing this morning?
Thanks so much for having me. I think I'm pretty much happy.
You are pretty much happy. So how would you rate this introduction from 0, completely failed product market fit, to unicorn outcome 10?
The intro of me or the backdrop of what we're about to talk about?
Whatever you want to go for. It doesn't matter. Just take whatever you want.
I think on the happy spectrum or enthusiasm spectrum, there's certainly a set of inputs, but a lot of it is also choice. As in, you and me can decide to make today a good day. As in, the sun is out, I've got a few monies in my pocket, a nice Diet Coke in the fridge, my laptop is new. I'm living the good life. Why not just choose to be happy? Doesn't mean that I don't have 17 things that I'm trying to kind of solve, that are kind of unsolved or kind of fussy. Yeah, sure. It's part of the journey. Still happy though.
Yeah, you need to have that mental model if you're a serial entrepreneur. We're going to talk about this in a second. So what do people get wrong about you once they get to know you, Dennis?
It's a good question. I'll pick one which is not super deep, but they get it wrong all the time. There is this belief, which I hate, that once you've had a little bit of success, say you make a startup, you get to the end, you make a few monies, you kind of won in that particular game. Then you're supposed to become an investor, angel investor, something in between. And I've just always kind of been somewhat confused, as in, well, if I'm good at this, if I really like this part of the journey, why is it that you want me to be on the other side of the table? As in, I have no interest. I'm actually a little bit disappointed that you and me have talked 17 times over. Shit, we might have worked together for 5 years straight. And your first assumption is, so, Dennis, are you going to go invest in something? Nah, not at all. I never invested $1 in anything. I do max on my current venture. Everything else is just real estate and super passive. Like max risk, no risk. I don't do anything in the middle. So that they get wrong all the time. And it annoys me.
You know, like some of the stuff I actually like. So I'm somewhere in between. I'm one of these people that you do not like in this regard. So like I'm not investing. I'm also not doing angel investing and so forth. But I do invest in some stocks of companies that I understand to the detail, I feel like. This is something that I picked up from my father, right? Like I would never invest in anything that I do not understand. So for instance, I do not invest in Bitcoin. I did not even invest in NVIDIA, even though I was with an AI company that also had like, bigger deal. Like I was at $300. I was like, yeah, maybe I should buy, maybe I should not, but I do not invest in those. But I do have some stocks of companies where I absolutely believe in. I did not do any due diligence in regards to like, the PE ratio, like are they overvalued and so forth. I just love their stuff. And I love it so much that I'm like, this is the future. And some of these companies I've never talked about publicly. I'm not an angel investor or anything. I just bought their stock because I really believe that this is the kind of future. This is the thing. Like I want to be part of it in some kind of way. It's not for the gains. It's just like, yeah, I want to be part of it.
I actually don't mind that particular bucket. I have stuff in that bucket as well. I don't think that's stealing much of your attention. So I own, say, Nike. But just like you, I haven't done any analysis on Nike. I just like the company, the firm, the whole backdrop. It goes up, great. It goes down. I'm still going to buy some of your sneakers, and I'll probably own that for a very, very long time. But it's more the assumption that, well, you've done an venture, and obviously it was so hard that you now must do something else. Well, if you suggest it was so hard, then you are somehow, at least the way I read it, alluding to the fact that I didn't enjoy the journey. I think I enjoyed the journey more than the destination. I'm happy that the apartment is paid for and, college is paid for the kids and all of that, but it was the journey. Why wouldn't I try to, if the journey was so enjoyable, do another one? As in, that should be in the cards. Not the one for where, are you going to be a partner in so-and-so VC firm? Are you going to set up your own fund? Are you going to do, 100 some odd angel investments? No.
I think I understand what you're trying to say. I do want to say, though, like in my experience, like building a company. So let's say we stay in the product space, right? Like for me, this was the only question that I had. I would never have a fund or anything. But let's say we separate the journey of a product or like a successful startup, like something that clicks and kind of works.
Yeah.
To part where you start from 0 to 1. So you have no data. You need to go out to customers. You need to talk to them. You need to build something. You need to figure some shit out that someone else has not figured out. So like this first 0 to 0.2, 0.5 kind of journey. This journey is extremely hard. It's extremely, extremely hard. And it is also tiring at times. I've done it a couple of times in my life and I always loved it. I also did it inside of companies, like, hey, Leah, can we build a new desktop application? We've never done this before. We want to do something like this. Can we kill the Adobe Reader with our product? That kind of stuff. So this is very exciting and I get this. But to me, I think also, maybe also to the appreciation of people who have never done this, I think this part of product management is sort of the same as like in sales when you do outbound calling. You will fail a lot.
Yeah.
And you don't really have the data why you're failing. A lot of it is based on feeling. Do we have the right thing now? Is it not the right thing? Should I let go of an idea that I have? Should I pursue it? Is it going to work eventually? And that kind of stuff. So this is what makes this so tough because the success rate from like 0 to anything is so incredibly hard. But I certainly can emphasize with the exhilarating factor of it. What I personally started to enjoy is like, I love to really enable people inside of organizations. And I love to build organizations where I would have loved to work in as a product manager because I had my best time as a 0 to 1 principal PM that was building new products that were not existing before. And I want to have other people do this as well. Not for the good of my heart. I just like this. I just like seeing something work like this. And it also works at scale. So I'm totally with you in this regard. So I think we have some common ground.
I think I'm even, extreme is just a dramatic word, but even the slight baby step outside of that circle I described for where you take joy, which I respect, in pulling along instead of other PMs and similar folks into a setting that you've experienced before and see them kind of succeed. I'll certainly do it. Any company that grows, that becomes part of your responsibility. But I think of this almost like, had I been a good footballer, if I could, and age was kind of working against me, I would play football throughout the entire journey to the day I die. Well, I'm not a good footballer. I just happen to be reasonably okay at startup. So no, I don't have any kind of joy in becoming a manager. I want to be knee deep in all the shit you just described. That I take joy in, which is why the whole kind of 0 to 10 people, if I can just keep replicating that, I don't need kind of any accolades for, now 800 people and I do a job for where do I even want to do that? Probably not.
That I agree with. So this is what I love about product management because it's very rare that you have a lot of direct reports.
Yeah.
Because these are usually attached to engineering and so forth, right? Like I also make sure that I have very, very light touches with my people. Anyways, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your companies because I invited you because it's not only that you are a serial entrepreneur, you also have a very good success rate, seemingly. So you're not only enjoying this, but you're also really good at this. So, and you're thinking very in an original kind of way about AI, automation. We've talked about this also in the pre-talk, and I wanted to also share this with the audience as well afterwards. But let's start with this. So you have a company called LaunchBrightly right now, and you make screenshots.
Yeah.
And this product is created by 6 guys in a basement.
Yeah.
How do you intend to make money with this? How does that work? What are you doing?
There's 1,000 different ways you can go attack a new idea. We can even talk about how you assemble new ideas or where is that particular well and why is my well perhaps good for me or good in general. The idea of trying to automate something which you would otherwise have humans do is typically not a bad idea. Sometimes you're trying to persuade people to do something which they didn't do before, as in, hey, start to do this and you'll be better off, but it's a whole new motion that you haven't experienced before. This is not that. You can go to any help.company.com for any SaaS company, pick any random kind of domain. We can kind of share it on screen. Go look at any of those articles. In those articles, you'll see a set of screenshots. Those screenshots, I will guarantee you, they are Command-Shift-4 on some MacBook Air and some dude called Tim and trying to find the right screenshot in the right state at this very moment, a few annotations, and they'll do it again tomorrow and the day after. Shit, I'll even gonna bet you we can pick up a random laptop from somebody in support right now and say, hey, show me your desktop. It'll be chock full of random screenshots she took yesterday. So this is a little easier to see how will this become commercially viable, simply because, well, we're doing it already and there's some cost associated with that. It might be somewhat invisible or hard to spot. There's many kind of tasks that kind of disappear into a salary for where, yeah, you're probably right. Well, this we can measure. It takes about 8 to 12 minutes for each one of those screenshots to be assembled if we're generous. And that kind of comes through a set of interviews. Well, how many do you have? Well, we can just do a scan of your existing kind of help center. 768? How often do you update them? And all of a sudden, there's a little spreadsheet for where, shit, damn, you're right, Dennis. We do spend about 150K a year in this. Well, machines can probably do it for 40. Seems like a good ROI to you? And there we are.
Yeah, so what I really love about this is not just about automation. So the way that we have been doing quality control in help centers, I just want to outline this really quickly. But let's say you were a bigger company, you have a help center. We have an absolutely shit complicated product that got photo. It's it's overly complex. It's very horizontal. We're trying to simplify it. This is my challenge right now. I really want to get this done. Anyway, so we have a help center that has all kinds of articles and all kinds of stuff on how to do exactly this, what you just said. The way that we commonly do quality assurance in these help centers is if enough customers are complaining that an article is out of date, then we're going to change it. And that's kind of problematic because you're always pissing off a couple of people before you start to make others happy. And this is like this typical thing where you go into an article of a version of a software that does not exist anymore. You hope it's the same thing. And then you hope there's some Indian guy on YouTube that made a video about it that is more recent and so forth. This is not sustainable. So not only are you automating, I would say you're actually going further. You're trying to take an information artifact. And I really want to appreciate this as well, because you're taking an information artifact that is extremely hard to keep up to date, and you're hoping to make it more automated. So can you maybe dive a little bit also, how does this work? So what do you offer? What is the idea? What is the functionality behind it? How does it work?
So I'm just going to riff a little bit on what you just said. So what you described is a story I hope most will see once we become a little bit more commercially aggressive. We just launched our version 1. So we've been in that bloody basement for 14 months to get to 3 weeks ago when we launched that first version. That kind of comes full circle. Of course, as founders, we can pick version 1 any day we want. That was the first kind of 14 months. But what you described is that there's surely some straight ROI. Time spent is now less. But you came up with another bucket, which is that, well, that moment of disappointment probably isn't free, which is that we had some user who, by the way, didn't even want to look at the article to begin with, as in I had hoped the application itself would be so intuitive, I could just figure it out. That's a utopia that we're never going to reach. So I'm going to look at an article, and now the article is shite, or outdated, or I'm confused. I'm going to put in a ticket. And of course, then the ticket comes at some real cost, because somebody needs to deal with that. But there's also that kind of bucket of disappointment for where you can only fill it up so much until they churn. It's not this one article. It's just a bucket of disappointment. So what you described, that's actually what I really want to latch onto, not just the straight automation kind of value. How do we do this? So imagine some focused version of Zapier. So you ask us to help set up a bunch of recipes. Hey, Dennis, I would like on this particular screen for this particular card in this particular state to be screenshotted with this particular insertion of data. And once you've done that, I would like it to be annotated so I can kind of write or apply focus on some parts of the context. And once you've done that, I want you to style it against some kind of style guide that fits our corporate identity. Once you've done that, I want you to upload it to some kind of cloud bucket. Once you've done that, can you log into my Zendesk, scan all my articles? Can you do a diff on those images? If there's any difference, can you give me kind of a little bit of an audit and say, hey, these 17 kind of changed? Some of them might just be, they bloody right aligned the button. Doesn't matter. I'll just take that image. Ooh, we actually changed this. This is not a drop down. This is actually a set of radio buttons now. We actually removed some of the options. I need to kind of rewrite some parts of the article as well. Pause. I'm going to accept the image later. So that whole process is one for where I kind of have two parts. I have a recipe builder. Again, think SAP here, just uniquely for this particular space. And that recipe builder will kind of build the recipes. And then I have an enterprise grade API for where at night I'll spin up, tens of thousands of browsers in the cloud, execute all these recipes, and kind of put them in the right places. What's interesting though is once this is automated, right? And I actually like that. There's many things where you can only automate away what we used to do yesterday as humans. As in, we did 7 things yesterday, now they're automated away. But there's other things where on automation, I can start to do superhuman things. As in, this wasn't even in the cards. So say you do 1,000 screenshots per application across those 500 some odd articles. But you could just tell me saying, Dennis, you know what? We did that sexy dark mode. Could you also kind of spin them up and just give me another kind of set in dark mode? Hey, by the way, it is responsible. Can you give me kind of 3 modes in mobile, tablet, desktop? Oh, that's 3 times dark and light. That's 6. Hey, we didn't localize it. Can you do the German, Spanish, and English? Ooh, that's 18. Shit. It was about 1,000 screenshots. That's 18,000 screenshots. Oh, can you run them every night? We usually do it once a quarter. Damn. So that's all of a sudden 60K screenshots a month. Now we're in superhuman territory where there's no dude named Tim that can do this. Well, if I have all of them, then you can even kind of extrapolate from there saying, I might even be able to do it uniquely for the persona for where Dennis, which is true, is on a Windows desktop in this mode with these kind of settings. Why don't I just spin up a browser with those exact settings? So when he looks at the Help Center, nice. It looks exactly like my environment. Like these guys are on it. So superhuman territory is kind of the interesting new bucket to kind of enter.
No, but it makes a lot of sense. And we talked about this a little bit in the pre-talk as well. And I think you made a very brilliant point in there as well. Because we have AI, people get more productive. So what does that mean? Like per individual engineer and product manager, there are more products being created, which means also, or like not necessarily new products. That's also true. But individual products can change also much faster. Like we can have the changes in the market and so forth. Which means that there is more stuff out there that needs to be documented as well, that needs to be interpreted, that also needs to be explained and so forth. Like we have a huge push also on our customer success every year, like when new customers are starting to onboard, old customers have problems and so forth. So support, automation, and this kind of help kind of way is really, really, really helpful. I'm a big believer in this. So tell me a little bit about what were your qualifiers for yourself to decide hey, I'm going to drag 5 of my friends into a basement. And then we're going to lock each other or whatever it is, for the other 5 poor souls. What made this an exciting opportunity for you? Because I could imagine that right now, everybody talks about AI. Everybody apparently builds AI, of course, right? So how did you kind of focus on this and said hey, this is an opportunity that I want to go for? How did you evaluate the market opportunity for yourself?
So you won't disagree with this, but there's certainly some people, not many, but some, more than I like, who fall in love with a piece of technology. And first of all, AI is such a big umbrella term that if you tell me you run an AI company, I'm immediately skeptical of you doing anything of interest. As in, sure, whatever, good luck to you. So this was one of those for where I've never been fond of a particular technology. I am very fond of true and honest pain points. As in, if you spot an error in the universe, in the way I walk around daily, side note. So my little well of ideas is one for where I don't try to come up with good ideas. As in, you and me, walking into a room tonight with a pizza, a couple of kind of Diet Cokes, trying to come up with good ideas. We'll come up with plenty of good ideas. It'll be super fun. I'm not so sure any of the ideas are worthy of us kind of pursuing. So what I do is I run a little list of hate on my phone. So while I'm doing one venture, whenever I spot an error in the universe, I write it down. Like I'm in line at Citibank and I'm thinking, this is shite. I should start a retail bank. And it just becomes a one-liner in my list of hate. And that list is just long. I never look at it. It's just a way to kind of take what I believe. This is kind of delusional, but I believe these are like kind of little babies and they need to survive. So I take those kind of items that I've spotted, put them on this list, and I just go about my day. Then one day we get to an exit in some capacity and I do my integration and all of that good juice. And then I go back and look at this list. First thought is, what an angry boy. Who wrote this? And it's just, this time I had like 17 pages of one-liners. Some of them, what were you thinking? Like, this is not even an issue. Like, you just had a bad day. This, though, was one of those items that I've written down multiple times, especially if you're a founder in an early stage startup. You are everything, including customer support, prime advocate, and so on and so forth. And I've done plenty of screenshots of my own account, as in go to my Twitter account and you'll see me kind of defending X.AI, our prior venture, over and over again with little kind of screenshots and what have you. Like, I've done this personally, not twice or thrice, but like tens of thousands of times over the last kind of 2 decades. So I have an intimate relationship, not a side note. Plenty of times you can do a startup where you allow yourself to assemble empathy for some pain which you don't have yourself. You can do a ton of interviews, and at some point, you feel what they feel. What's even better, if you're so lucky, is if you have the pain yourself. As in, there is no interview. I can just tell you, I fucking hate this. Not as in, yeah, my spreadsheet tells me I should hate it. No, me, personally. Command Shift 4, I don't like it. So that was on the list, and then I have a whole verification process for how I decide whether we do it or not. But it kind of came out on the other side of that. But it was on that particular list. And it's been very nice in those 14 months of very dark hours to sit on something for every little kind of push to production. I'm a little happier now. I can see us getting closer.
I feel like this is the same process. So mine is not a hate list. I have a list, or like I have a WhatsApp group where I invited someone, then I created a group, and then I kicked that other person out. So I'm the only member. And I call it doesn't have to be this way. And these are the things that are just annoying me all the time. And yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the same, right? Like you're just like, oh, yeah, it doesn't have to be this way, right? So like I grew up in sales-led companies, for instance, that had a very particular style of management, and I'm just like, it doesn't have to be this way. Yeah, it has to, blah, 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 blah. I'm just like, all this macho bullshit where you have to just grind people to death and all this kinds of stuff. I'm just not interested in it. I'm just like, no, it doesn't have to be this way. I didn't have a solution back then. But when I'm now reading back on all this stuff, I just see like, hey, look, I'm still annoyed about the same shit and so forth. I've tested it myself. It does work any different. It absolutely does. I can take care of my people without being a complete asshole and still be firm about my commitments and hold people accountable and so forth, and still also solve exciting problems, without all these bullshit processes and toolings and stuff that comes from the other side. It just requires hard work. You have to get up every day and work a little bit on it. That is the tough thing. And I think sometimes this is a little bit tangential, but like I feel like sometimes we get up in the morning and we feel like, oh, I hope there is a tool that takes away the hard work that I do. No matter how much you automate, there's always like a little bit that you have to take care of yourself. And then automation is going to take the rest. I get it, right? Like, and then you have to QA at the end. But I think that's just what it is, right? Like it always started also with me like, hey, it doesn't have to be this way. So I can totally emphasize with that, 100%.
I'm happy to have found a friend out there who keeps a similar list under a different title, but I think the lists are very similar.
One friend. Okay, that's literally something, like one friend.
I meet too many people for where their list is based on love, which is that, yeah, me and my buddy met up the other night. We talked about this thing that we're super hyped about. Oh, so where did the pain come from? No. We're thinking about, we can do this new type of prediction in this new type of setting on this new particular data set. Those are all just kind of very...
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Nice. Hack around. I'm not so sure you have a real kind of possible business you can go attached to it.
So the way that I try to size opportunities or like try to figure out, you can even take a local product. Let's say you are a product manager that has to deal with some kind of product inside of another bigger product. Doesn't matter, right? Like whether your market is small or bigger, it doesn't matter. The way that I assess opportunities is exactly in the way that you said. First, I try to figure out, okay, what is each individual need, not feature, need that a person has? How important is it to them? And then the second dimension is how well can they do it right now? If the gap is big enough, that tells me they're pissed off.
Yeah.
It's that simple, right? Like this is the first kind of step. You understand, okay, this is a problem. Because only where frustration is, there is room for a new solution. And now you can come up with like, hey, I think I can come up with a solution, but exactly what you described is what a lot of people do. They have some kind of idea. Oh, I think we could do something this way. Let's find a problem for it. And these people almost inadvertently fail. And I think if you can get genuinely annoyed with a problem, right, like that exists, then it almost doesn't matter whether you like the solution, you have to hate the problem in some kind of way. So I really like this kind of framing because I'm exactly the same. I get visibly annoyed about shit all the time, and then I'm super motivated in actually fixing it. Maybe I'm petty, like maybe so I can say in the end, like, yeah, I told you so, see?
Petty is a great quality. If you run new products, new features, new startups, that's a great quality. And
no.
In the right way. I do like, which I've applied certainly on my start a new venture qualification setup, to try to assemble a group of people who can convince me to not do it. I think there's a lot of value in seeing whether you've assembled enough knowledge to defend an idea. So before I start anything, I invite a bunch of folks to come and convince me to not do it. As in, if I can't even, that can be a set of scientists or engineers or commercial folks or folks from the kind of particular vertical that we are attacking, something for where I've done all my homework. And if you can come in over a set number of days, could be a week, a long weekend, what have you, and somehow inject either doubt, uncertainty, things I can't answer, well, either I wasn't prepared or the idea just isn't as strong as I thought it would be. That I like. And that's just brutal because it's very easy to fall in love. But once you get started, there goes 4 or 5 years of your life. You got to be sure. You got to get married to this. So you got to be sure. So I really tried hard to kill things. And I got plenty of things where I was so in love that I died on that.
No, 100%. And I think it's exactly what you said, right? Like it's super easy to get started with something like this, but you need to be aware that you are going to be stuck for years in this. Yeah. There is no founder story where you are 3 weeks in it and then you have an exit. It's just not happening. So spend a couple of weeks to construct this like a business case, even if you're just like in a job again, right? Like I have a lot of people who are listening to this who are just now, maybe they get a new job or whatever. It's the same principle with every business case. The best business cases that I have seen is where I feel that they try to deconstruct them themselves. It's not about finding the arguments that are speaking for the business case. It's like, can you surface where it might fail and where you actually try to also de-risk yourself? Like the best pitches that I have also heard of products where I'm getting excited about, hey, I think you should build this. I think you should really do it, is where they said, hey, but then this could happen as well. But I think we have it under control. We're not sure. It could still happen, of course, right? But it's just what it is. But at least you thought about it. You're aware of it. And I think that's very, very important because people oftentimes are just looking for arguments that support whatever they do. And then they become these confirmation bias people. And then they hold themselves hostage in a company that they do not want to be in for like 3 to 4 years, which is something I did, by the way, with my very first startup. And I was in love with the solution. And I stuck in there for 4 years and I should not have done it. I was creating with my father a picture archive for photographers out of a country where it makes no sense to create photography pictures. Like it was way back in the days, like when all of this stuff became commoditized and so forth. And I did not want to realize it because I was so much in love with the solution. Like, I'm a photographer. I love doing this and all that. It's the exact same thing. I never really challenged the business case. I was just convinced, the world is waiting for this. Nobody was waiting for this. Or like at least not enough people.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I also know that in an episode with Andrew from Churn FM, I'm not sure whether you still remember it. It was in December. You were also talking about, in general, on how to fight churn in some kind of way. And do you still remember that conversation that you had with Andrew?
Of course.
So let's say you have your brilliant idea. So you're the 6 guys. It's going to get started. Even at some point, even Dennis, the lover of 0 to 1, has to consider how he can keep the number 1. How do you think about churn from your perspective? Because I'm always interested in like how innovation PMs and founders and entrepreneurs are thinking about how do you defend your startup? What kind of tools do you use? Because at some point you have to step from everything qualitative, vision driven. It's very clear what I want to do, to now defending the customers that you have. How do you think about this at this particular scale? Let's say LaunchBrightly takes off like crazy. How are you going to keep the people?
So our 2 of the first 3 ventures that we did back in the day were straight analytics ventures. So event tracking. First one based on web server log files. Next one on what you and me would see as JavaScript tracking today, putting a picture on a site very similar to Google Analytics. We ended up being acquired by Yahoo. So I have a intimate relationship with instrumenting your product for really good data collection. So I at least have the opportunity at any moment in time to go question my product and the users of it, whether they do what I want them to do. That's the one part. I think people underinvest in that. I say, yeah, we track a few things, or we have a couple of good metrics, or we might have 1 or 2 good KPIs. I would rather, in that kind of, when that pendulum kind of swings towards doing too much or too little, you should swing it so far to the right that you're probably tracking too much. There's a very small penalty attached to that. So I'm very dramatic on tracking activity. So we have event tracking on everything. Now, having said that, I like, especially early on, if at all possible, if you can somehow line the success up of your customers, your company, and everything to one single KPI. As in, if we do more of this, everybody's happy. It will be more detailed in the future. There'll be all sorts of things we want to optimize. We might have to kind of swear away and kind of pick other things or look at multiple things. But today, if I take our last venture as a good example, we had one single KPI, 3 big ass, whatever, 48-inch monitors in the office that showed that number, no explanation. We all knew what the number would be. And it was just monthly meetings scheduled. We were in the scheduling space. So we just had a rolling number over the last 28 days that we looked at. And we all had an intimate relationship with that. As in, well, if we schedule more meetings, then our customers are obviously happier because they're using the tool to do what it's supposed to do. I also know if we schedule more meetings, I get more exposure. We had some sort of viral loop for where we get exposed to more guests. Some of those guests kind of sign up. The whole company ran just on that number, as in, do more of that. This is very similar. Screenshots generated, as in how many PNGs can I spit out? If they continue to generate, perhaps they add more screenshots, perhaps they increase the cadence, perhaps they run them not once a week, every 4 days, once every night, perhaps they do it for another product. We charge on a per screenshots basis. Oh, well, we're going to have some increase in some kind of revenue metric that we care about. So I like the whole, if at all possible, sometimes it's not, but if you can get attached to that one thing for where that's it. We're really a screenshots company. The more PNGs we spit out, the better. And that's it. Then you can look at that saying, why are some of my users generating less of what they are using my tooling to do, hopefully more of? Then we can talk about how you're going to solve for that.
I really like this because we also did this at Small PDF. I think for us, it was the amount of documents that were being processed, like through all the kind of different tools that you had and so forth. Because we knew the more documents that are being processed, the more people are starting to use it. It's not universally true. Like we do not want to incentivize bad behavior, like create more documents than are necessary. But over and all, like all of this is kind of true. So what you were talking about was X.AI, right? Like that you also sold at some point. Yeah. So this was a SaaS AI scheduling tool in some kind of way. So like you were directly competing with Calendly, Google Calendar. I don't know whether Google had their scheduling solution already out there. I don't consider their current calendar solution very good, but like that's just what it is. So this was another automation thing, right? Like you were dealing with something that pissed you off where you were just like, no, that's not, this is just not happening.
It's very similar. So if you imagine some individual in some customer support organization right now, Tina, she's a knowledge manager taking a screenshot. It's not that she does not know how to do it. It's just that it's yet another chore.
Yeah.
And it's a chore for where I can't even do all of the chores that's on my list. So I have to kind of surrender and say, hey, I accept some level of rot. If you think of meeting scheduling, it's not that I don't know how to send you an email saying I'm free next week between so-and-so and so-and-so. Like, I can do it. It's just another little chore I'd rather be without. So very similar in the sense for where hyper-focused, there's a little kind of subset of your day for where you do a chore, I think I might be able to automate. That turned out to be much, much harder, just from a science point of view, than we had imagined. And it's probably the case really with any startup or any kind of endeavor, any product feature that you do, which is that when you close your eyes and think about it the first time, oh, yeah, not a weekend hackathon, but over the summer, we should be able to put something together. Then you get cranking on it and you figure out, damn, this is a year-long, if not multi-year-long endeavor. And this turned out to be just that. Just to kind of give you some perspective, we had 101 people just on data labeling. Here's another side note. Whenever people say AI, half the folks really just replace the word magic with AI and have really no intimate relationship with what they're trying to describe. And those who have an intimate relationship with it, sometimes I fear fall in love with the model itself. And you're not going to win on best model. That's my opinion, at least. You can push back on that. I don't think best model will win. I think
100%.
Best proprietary raw data set, which you own and operate, as in a well, which you can go, assemble a new fresh data set from at any point in time. That's how you win. And even worse, some people will build their future on a leased data set, which is the most scary part. And I just can't imagine how you do anything like that. As in, we do all these sexy predictions on the Twitter stream or X stream, as it's called today. Like, good luck. Like, I wouldn't dare. If I don't own the unique data set for which I'm making predictions, I'm not in it. It's not for me. And we're in the same space right now for where obviously, even though I tell you down the list that my venture is just taking some sexy PNGs, I'm sure most people can immediately imagine, Dennis could probably extract some additional metadata from those images, such as UI concepts, UX concepts, whole sorts of things that would allow people to ask questions that are not in wording, as in, hey, when I click the red button on this screen, well, I can see that. So there's all sorts of predictions I will make in the future to kind of enhance this imagery. So I want to own that. And if you don't, you're in a kind of scary type of setting.
I want to double click on this really quickly because it's also something that I have to explain to people quite a lot. I feel like, so I'm not an expert in AI. I used to lead an AI organization on the product and so forth. So I know a little bit more than the average person, but I think it's very interesting on what you said. So when we say that we have the model, we have the processing of the data afterwards, and we have the data that is going into the model, then we are talking about processes that can introduce bias, right? So like error proneness into the data. So this is what you were talking about, right? Like sometimes we do data labeling, we try to clean out the data and so forth. But I think what you were talking about as well, and this is also what we started to notice about a couple of years ago, also like with Jua, where we were thinking about, hey, the model space is developing extremely fast. It's just like every week at that point, there's a new kind of technology on, how to train models, how to be more efficient. GPUs are getting cheaper and so forth. So this is not defendable. And why is it not defendable? Because even the best model, you can make it a little bit cheaper and so forth, but there's just not that much error anymore that you can reduce at some point, right? Like there's a specific limit, or like the diminishing returns are starting to go. Then you have the data. Data is incredibly faulty. And usually we make predictions about things that are happening in real life. And what we mean with that is that sometimes sensory readings, so like let's say something very, very specific. So let's say I'm taking the sensory reading from your car, and your car is standing in the sun, and it says it's 60 degrees Celsius in the sun. Is it 60 degrees outside of your house? I don't know. Does the AI know? Probably not, right? So like now it thinks it's 60 degrees outside of your house, so it makes predictions based on this particular data point. So we need to clean out a lot of stuff. And owning this data creating new data streams and making sure that also future data stays in this particular quality is extremely important. There's a paper that came out on the 4th of April. I'm not sure whether you've read it. It's about no zero shot without exponential data. So for all we know, there is no kind of point right now in AI development, as far as we know with existing technology, where throwing more data that is accurate at the problem will lead to this AGI that can solve problems that it has never seen before. Because the amount of data that we need is astronomically big, specifically for problems who are not well represented in data. So what does that mean? This means that if I want an AI to solve something that is only specific to Dennis, the AI will start to struggle because there's not a lot of data in the system about Dennis, unless Dennis's problem is very, very common and also represented by other people. And this is something that's quite interesting to me as well. So, I honestly think that this is a very interesting space. And I think that the answer is in data, exactly as you said, and not in the model anymore. So yeah, I'm all with this. I'm not sure where this is going, but this is a super interesting paper. I highly recommend you also to look at it.
I would certainly encourage anybody doing any form of prediction in any capacity, if they think this is their kind of competitive edge, to verify and conclude that I own the data set upon which we're making these predictions. There's certainly a whole host of generic predictions I might want to include in my application that I don't need to own and operate. As in, I want to do some quick sentiment analysis on some user-generated content that goes into my platform. I don't need to own the particular data set that was used initially to train for sentiment analysis. I'll just use something generic. This is not where I go compete, but there's certainly parts of what I do where this is what I compete on. This is how I win or lose. And I can't win on somebody else's data set. I can only win on my own data set, or at least allow myself the possibility of winning.
This is 100% true. And I think you can make a case for these micro SaaS businesses that are popping up everywhere, with microservices that are very, very momentary. I get all this. This is all fine, right? But we're in the market of trying to solve the bigger problems. And I think for those, exactly what you said is true. You need to have something that you can defend going forward. If your idea does have no kind of sustenance in 5 years, then you should not build it, in my opinion. That's at least how I look at it. I'm not thinking that I make the world substantially better with my solutions, but I would like to have something that honestly takes away this annoyance in the world. It does not have to be this way. It just does not have to be this way. It could be better. Yeah, I don't know. That's how I'm thinking. So yeah, Dennis, we've been going already at 45 minutes. Unbelievable. What is on top of your mind right now? What do you believe is going to be the next trend before we conclude this entire episode? What are things that you are extremely excited about, except your startup to blow up and everybody's going to use LaunchBrightly going forward? Is there something that you're excited about right now?
There's certainly the bucket for where I am trying to make the most of our little endeavor here and turn it from little to a little less little than it was yesterday. And there'll be all the usual kind of tasks that kind of goes into that. And if we just take one step forward every day, we're going to be in a better place in a little while. So I'm very comfortable on that. On a separate side note, just as a technologist, and you and me kind of look out the window enough to kind of have ideas outside of what we're kind of working on. The one thing that I wouldn't say I think about a lot, but certainly I think about is what that new UI paradigm will look like now when they have semi-intelligent agents attached. It could be that it's just raw fingers, keyboard, text input, you give me some text back. Perhaps it's mixed mode, you give me some imagery back as well. But what does that actually look like? Because I grew up on the command line. That's why I took my CS degree. And for anybody who have access to any form of compute, you pretty much needed a CS degree. Then, of course, we got the graphical user interface. My mom could write in WordPerfect and all sorts of kind of good things. We slightly democratized it. We still needed a little bit of education to get access to compute. Then, of course, we had perhaps it's this thing, the touch UI, our mobile phones. We started to kind of interact with them slightly different. We thought perhaps in the last 5-10 years that the conversational UI would be a distinct UI in its own right. I'm not so sure that we've seen it fully cement. I do a lot of questions on ChatGPT and other places where I expect some sort of response. I'm not sure it's fully cemented yet, as in what's the best way to work with that? And you've seen it kind of jammed in to some applications where, hey, here you can start to write something where it feels like, sure, Adobe, I see what you're doing here. And yeah, it is fucking sexy. You're right. I love it. But I'm just fooling around right now. It's not really a working tool. So what does it look like? That, and I don't have a good answer. It's not like I'm writing you towards some sort of destination where I'll give you a conclusion. It's just something where, yeah, there'll be a prompt in Adobe Photoshop, but is that how it's going to arrive? It feels a little kind of, not right, or it doesn't feel like we've reached the destination just yet. Even though I'm taking a lot of pleasure and a lot of value from it right now, I'm using, if I look at that Copilot I had in VS Code that does a ton of fantastic output, mind blown, but it's not the destination. So I'm really excited about that. Even fooled around with the new kind of voice input, having a little bit of a conversation towards a conclusion, again on ChatGPT, which is just the preferred agent I picked to kind of fool around with. Yeah, slightly smarter than Siri, I get it, but I don't think I've reached the place where I need to be. So yeah, perhaps you have the answer and you can educate me.
No, I don't have the answer at all. Like, I'm exactly in the same space. So I also think that UIs are going to fundamentally change. What I do think is we will have products that are voice first rather than voice second. Because right now we have Google Assistant, like, hey, give it some kind of orders, and then it does something that you would have done through an interface. Like, hey, what is the temperature today in where I live? And it kind of works fine enough, right? Like, I occasionally use my Google Assistant and so forth. So I think this will change. We will have some products in the future that are voice first and then UI second. Go for it.
And I actually think you hit the nail on the head there, which is that Google Assistant or Siri or Alexa or your favorite assistant, and as they're called, are not really assistants. They're voice commands, which is that, yes, I do use it to kind of set a timer, play some music, ask for a single fact, but they're just voice commands. I do think, as you allude to, that once assistants start to arrive, that will be a different relationship, a different type of relationship, certainly with more long-term memory.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree, because also these systems, like these assistants that we have, they need to operate systems that have not been created for them, right? It's like a robot that has to drive a car that has been driven by humans on roads that have been built for humans and so forth.
Yeah.
There is a very interesting video that I shared with Kieran Flanagan just yesterday that is really, really, really crazy. I need to show it to you afterwards. So basically what it is you have a train conductor in a train wagon, and there are 4 people sitting there: Cleopatra, Genghis Khan, and 2 other like historical figures in the world, whatever. Each one of these are an AI model, and one of them is an actual human. And what this is that the train conductor asks the group, one of you is a human, try to figure out who it is. And then the AIs are starting to have a conversation with each other, and the human as well, trying to blend in, like kind of like turning it completely around. And it is so fascinating to see how difficult it is for the human to hide himself amongst AIs. I will show this to you. I will also put it in the show notes. It's absolutely mind-blowing, because you can turn this entire conversation also around. It's not just about how does AI serve us, but how do we fit into a world where AI is maybe sometimes also kind of like, the default, because it can also function without us, at least in some kind of degree, without getting too metaphysical right now. But I want to show you this as well afterwards.
I'm going to love it. This is me looking up at my bookshelf. I was trying to find a book while you were talking that speaks about exactly that. So once a year, I'm not so sure they do it anymore, but certainly for more than a decade, they did a Turing test on a set of folks behind a screen, humans and machines, and it was up to a panel to figure out who are machines and who are humans. There's a book about that, I believe it's called The Most Human Human, which is very interesting, which is exactly what you described, where the panel is trying to figure out, of those who I speak to, which one of them are human. And the funny thing is that some of the humans are classified as machines, and again, some of the machines, of course, classified as humans. But it's a very interesting book on exactly that theme. So I'm going to share that. We're going to do a little search once we're done here. I'll do my Amazon search. You'll find your video. But it's a very interesting kind of case.
Yes, we will put everything into the show notes. Highly recommend to look into Dennis's book and this little video. It's very exciting technology. And we're going to be part of it in some kind of way, hopefully, maybe not. We will see. Dennis, how should people reach out to you? Should they message you on LinkedIn? You have a lot more followers than me, which is a very rare occasion, but you do. So should people message you there? How should people get in contact with you? Would you like to hear from people?
I am everywhere on the internet under Dennis Mortensen as a handle, and they can message me on any one of those channels. Where I am best, which probably shows that I got started on tech early, is on email. Anybody can email me at dennis@launchbrightly.com. I'm an inbox zero kind of guy, which means that I will certainly look at your email. If you didn't get an answer, well, that was deliberate. But I actually do try very hard to reply to everybody. And I'm very strong in that email game. I have a ton of automation.
All right. Everybody that's listening. Everybody that's listening to this, please send Dennis a personalized email to thanking him for being on this podcast so he has something to do tomorrow. So thank you very much, Dennis. This is the end of this episode. Thank you very, 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 very much for spending this hour with me. And that's the end of the Product Tea. Ba-boom. Thank you so much for listening to the Product Tea with Lea. If you don't have enough yet, you can subscribe to my podcast right now on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can head to my website, leatarin.com, which is leahtharin.com, where you can find much more of my material or just want to work with me.